Hey guys, it's Sam for Digital Meat, and in this Cinema 4D video I want to talk about the Axis Center tool. So let's just get straight to it. I'm going to create a box. I'm going to make sure it's on the floor. If you're wondering what the button is up here that I just pressed, that's a plugin called Drop to Floor. I've already made a video about that, and I'm just going to create a kind of pseudo door shape, something like this. Okay, cool. And I'm going to make this editable. Now, some of you, when you want to move your axis, you probably click on this tool here. This is the Enable Axis tool, and it means that you can move the axis independent of the object itself, and you might go into your top view. I mean, say this, you want this to be a door. You're obviously going to want a hinge at one side, so you'll probably go into your top view, something like this, grab this, put it near your edge, zoom in further, and try and line it up like that. Maybe put it in one of the corners because that's where the hinge of it's going to be. Obviously this is a super simple model. In fact, we might make it more complicated in a minute. And you keep zooming in until you get it, as close as you can. And now when you come out of this tool here, you'll have something that rotates around. Now with more complex objects, obviously this is going to be a bit of a pain in the arse. And so I'm just going to move this back to its original position, and that's where the center axis tool comes in. It is super useful for lots and lots of different things, and we're going to go through a few of those things now. So you can find this tool if you go to Mesh and then down to Axis, and then here you'll have Axis Center, then you've got Center Axis 2, Center Object, all of this stuff here. But all of these are actually contained within this Axis Center. And it'll, when you click on it, it'll open it up this dialog. Let's reset that so it's back to its default settings. Now, I use this tool so much that I've actually docked it up here. And if you don't know how to do that, you can go to Window, Customization, and Customize Command. And then you can type in Axis Center, and it will find this here. And then you can just drag this out and put it in your layout here. As you can see, I've got two there now because I've actually already got it in my saved startup layout. So let's just reload that. And there we go. We've got the save startup layout. Okay, with our button here now, then I can press this and I can just put our dialog up here, just out of the way. And we're going to go through this and sort of explain what each of these means. Now, first of all, we've got this little checkbox here called center. And basically this needs to be activated if you want to be able to move the axis. If you turn this off, obviously you can see this is all grayed out. Now, I was a bit confused by this at the beginning because it's called the Axis Center tool. So why would I need this little checkbox? It's obvious that I want to move my axis. So, what is the point of this? But it's because you can also align stuff as well. So if you want to align your axis without moving its position, you can turn this off and obviously turn this on. So that's why. Okay, so let's go through a few of these options here then. So to start off with, I'm actually going to leave these drop downs here set to Axis 2 and all points. And we can go over a few of these sliders here. So Axis 2, it basically means that the object axis will be moved. Okay, and center all points. So you can actually center to all of the points of the object, or you can center to selected points, selected polygons, selected edges, which is super useful. And the action axis 2, object 2, view center, and all the rest of it. We'll go through that in a second. But if I wanted to move this axis, so let's get the top view and frame that, zoom out slightly. So we want to say our hinge is over here somewhere. We can move it along the X, and you can see the X there, along the X-axis, and if I go minus 100%, it will move it all the way to this edge, its extremities. And if we zoom right in, we can see that it's perfectly on that edge, and we haven't had to go into this like we did before and faff around. It's just done it. And we can also do this in the Z direction as well. So if we bring the Z all the way down and press execute, it will be right on this corner now. And now we're able to rotate around that point right on the edge there. So that's what these sliders do. Let's reset. If you hit reset, you got execute here, which will execute whatever options you got set, and you got the reset button. So if you hit reset, everything will go back to the default settings, and if I hit execute now, the axis will be at the center of all points in the center of the object, because these are all at 0%. Okay, let's go through a few of these options then. So let's get back to our perspective view. So we've got axis to even, and we've got object to. So if I go to object to and then change the X, instead of moving the axis all the way to the extremities in the minus X, it will move the object instead. So if I press execute now, the axis is on the extremities of minus X of the object, but instead of moving the axis to the extremities of the object, it's moved the object so the axis is on the extremities. So if I go back and hit it again, you can see the object's being moved. So that might be what you want. You might want your axis to remain on 0 or whatever, and that applies in all directions. So it'll move the object instead of the axis itself. That's all that means. So let's go back. We've got view center. I can't really think of a good reason to use this, but you know, I'm sure there's some of you out there that might have a use for this. But if we have our view like this and I hit this, you can notice now that all of these the XYZ has been grayed out, and it's because it's not going to be used in this calculation. It's purely based on the viewport's view. So if I go here and hit execute, it's going to move the object and its axis to the middle of the view. And if I go over here and hit it, bang, and it will keep going. That actually might be helpful if you've created a large scene and you're working on, you know, a section over here. You've created a new object, it creates a world 0, but you want it where your view is. You can just view center and execute, and it will bring it to you, and then you can work with it there. I suppose that's a good use case for that. Then we have a couple of options for parent 2 and 2 parents. Let's go parent 2. So let's create a parent for this. I'm just going to make a sphere so we can differentiate our objects. In fact, I'm going to take our cube back to world 0 as well. And I'm just going to hit S so we're back there. And also I'm going to make our cube sit on the floor again. And let's grab our sphere and size this down slightly. And let's make our sphere a child of the cube. Okay. And I'm going to make this editable as well. And we're going to go to parent 2. So what parent 2 actually does is brings the axis of our parent object to our selected object. So I've got the sphere selected and it's a child of the cube. And if I execute, it brings the door to that object. And you can do the reverse of that, which is to parent. So my selected object, the sphere, will now go to the pivot of the parent. And that's what that means. In these modes as well, you'll notice something different. If I go back to axis 2, you'll see that these position, rotation and scale are grayed out. But when I'm at, if I go to parent 2 or to parent, it will give us the option of, would you like to carry across the position and the rotation or the scale of those objects? This is quite handy because you may have a case where you want to move this object to the position of the pivot of this door, but you don't want to bring the rotation. So if I take this sphere out of the cube for a moment and then rotate this cube, something dodgy like this, and then put the sphere back in, and also let's move the sphere away so it makes it more obvious. And I have position and rotation turned on and execute. In fact, we want not parent 2, to parent, so we'll bring the sphere to the parent and we'll execute. It also rotates the sphere as well, so the position and rotation has been checked on there. But if I did want to bring this sphere to the pivot's location but not its rotation, I can check that off and move it accordingly, but without rotating the object. Okay, let's get back to axis 2. This is the one that I use the most, to be honest. Let's reset those options as well. For the sake of argument, I'm going to, let's just delete those two things. I'm going to create another cube, nice and quick, and make another door type shape. Make this editable. Okay, next we're going to have a look at this center drop down. And at the moment it's set to all points, so if I hit execute, nothing's going to happen because this axis is already in the center of all of the points of our object. The only thing that will tweak that is obviously these sliders. That kind of overrides this, at least in this axis anyway. So let's reset that, get it back in the middle. But we've got some other options down here, and we've got selected points. So if I go into my point tool and actually select these 2 points up here, and then go back to our object tool, you don't have to. You could remain in points mode and hit execute and it'll do the same thing. But I'm going to go back to objects just so you can see that it moves our axis in relation to the points we've selected. So let's go down and say selected points. We know that we've got these 2 selected. If we go back into points mode, there you see they're selected. So let's hit execute, and now our axis is in the center of those 2 points. You could even pick 1 point. If you wanted the axis center to be on an individual point, you can do that as well. This also works for other things like selected polys. So if I went into polygon mode and selected this poly on the edge here, and you can see the center of that poly is coming up, and if we go back to the object axis and hit execute, we can see that that's there. The same applies to edge as well. So if we select edge, we can select this edge, go back to this so we can see, hit execute, and it moves to this. Excellent. Okay, so that covers both of these drop downs and what they do. I'm going to get this back to all points. I'm also going to make sure that we haven't got anything selected in our points and edges and polygon. And let's get this back to the middle. Okay, let's make this a little bit more complicated. I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to shrink down its size and adjust its height as well. We don't need that many height segments, and we certainly don't need that many rotational. Let's bring this down to 12 or something like that, and we can size this something like this, and we can put this on the side, and we're actually going to make this one object. So let's connect objects and delete, and now we've got one object, and this is a door and this is our hinge. It's a horrible model, but it will serve as a good example for us. So we would obviously want our hinge to be in the middle of this here. So what we can do is select our object, and if we obviously just hit that, it's going to evaluate all the points in our object, and you'll see that it's offset slightly because it's taken these points into account. But like I said, we want them over here. Now obviously scooching this along to over here is not going to be good because it's going to be on the outer extremities. I suppose what you could do is keep tweaking this until you get the desired result, but you're going to be playing a hit and miss game by doing that. So what we could do, I didn't mean to do that, let's frame default. What we could do is actually use our points. So we can say selected points, grab that one, smack bang in the middle, and then grab this one here as well. And then we can execute that. And now when we go back to our model axis, it should be smack bang in the middle of that hinge, and we can now rotate everything around that hinge. So that's a good use case for what I was talking about. And this is super useful if you need your doors, if your doors are going to be opening and shutting. I use this tool a lot because I export quite a lot to Unity. So if I had a door that was actually a rigid body that you can open and close, you'd need your pivots to be in the correct places, obviously. And same with animation or anything like that. So that's a good use case for that. So let's move on to alignment, and let's mess this up a little bit. So with our door, let's actually change its orientation like this to something really, it's not aligned with the world in any way. And what we'll do is we'll set everything back to the middle again. And in fact, let's turn on alignment and align everything with the world as well. So you might be in a situation, in fact, will that reset? Yeah, it actually doesn't reset the world stuff there. I wonder, no, you can't, there's no return to default. But you may get a model that comes in and, you know, it may be CAD, it may be something dodgy, and it comes in like this. So what you'd want to do is actually not only move the axis to where you want it to be, but you'd want to include alignment. So let's do this in two parts. So if I go to my points and do what I did before, we can say selected points. We can go grab that point there and this point here. And we can now execute this. And now in our model mode, we should be at the right place. But the problem we have now is that it's not aligned correctly with this. So let's deal with the alignment separately and turn off the center checkbox. So now it's in the right place. We don't want the axis to be moved. We don't want its position to be changed at all. We're just worried about the alignment. So in this mode, it's all. And the options, you've got, you know, X, Y, Z, but we're going to leave it at all. And the alignment is normals. So let's just execute that and see what happens. And also make sure that we're in our local axis in the coordinate system, which we are. Now that didn't do too much help there. So what we can do is a selected edge or world. So I'm going to go for selected edge, and we can actually just select one of these edges around our thing like that. And if I go back to this and hit execute, you'll see now that this is aligned with our edge. And if we go back into this tool, we can see that everything's aligned. Now we can actually decide which way's up and all the rest of it. Let's go into our world coordinates. We may want this Z here to be pointing in the Y direction. So I think this might be up. Let's test this theory. So by doing that, now if we center this out, go to our coordinates and actually center out our rotation, or zero it out, sorry, it should be, this is standing up and in the correct place. And now this is in the right spot. We can also change this back to normal. In fact, I'm going to turn alignment off now and go back to our center tool, and we can actually zero out the position on the X and the Z, and in fact we could center out the Y as well, and then make sure it's sat on the floor. So now we've got our door orientated correctly, and we've sorted out the axis for that, even though it was a proper dodgy situation. So that's how we use the alignment as well. We've got a couple of checkboxes over here called include children and use all objects. So let's have a look at include children. So again, I'm going to create another box, and let's just hit T and scale this down. And I'm just going to move it over here and make this a child of the cube. So cube 1 is our child there, and we'll make that editable. Now, as you can see, its axis is right in the middle, and this axis is where we left it. So with include children, if I wanted to move the axis of this in the positive Z and hit execute, oh, it's on selected points, that's why it wasn't doing anything. Let's go all points and press execute. It will move it to the extremities of this side of the object, but with include children checked, it will also move the axis of this object as well. So it'll evaluate its child and move its axis all the way over too. So let's put this back to the middle again, and as you can see, that's moved, but this one hasn't, and that's because I had the child selected and I had include children, and this hasn't got any children. So if I select our parent again and execute, this will be back to the middle, and this will be back to the middle as well. So let's turn this off. So the next option we've got is use all objects. So if we select our parent, hit use all objects and execute, not a lot happens because this is already in the center, and if we select our child, that's already in the center too. So you're probably thinking, what's the point of this use all objects? Well, if we use all objects and in combination with include children, you'll see that it does this. So what it does is it evaluates everything within this hierarchy. So even though the child's axis has not changed, the parent, if we select that, that will evaluate the points of the parent object and its children. This also works in nulls as well. So if we create a null object and then put both of these in it, not in a hierarchy, like so, and then select the null and execute, it will look at everything within itself to define where this axis should be. And just one more thing before I go, and that is the auto update. So far, to establish the axis position of this object, I will set where I want it to be and then hit execute. And we've got this auto updater. So if we check this box on and change this, it will just auto update accordingly. It's not necessary to hit this execute button. I'm not actually sure what the editor update does. In the help documentation, it says the option makes sure the object axis is updated for the access to option. Well, we're already on access to, and we're moving this, and it is updating. So I don't know whether that's necessary or not, really. I mean, when it's on, it does exactly the same thing. Anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm sure you'll agree that this is a powerful tool, and it saves a lot of faffing around when you can just use this dialogue to achieve the results that you want to achieve. I find it so useful that I've got it up in my UI and I use it quite a lot. So I just thought I'd go over that. Okay, guys, cheers for listening. Bye.